It all started with a quick stop at the local grocery store after my shift. I was still in uniform, tired but relaxed, with just a basket of essentials in hand. Nothing out of the ordinary until a young man in the parking lot blocked my path and demanded I hand over my groceries. I thought he was joking at first, but the way he looked at me, the way he spoke it, wasn't about food. It was about power, about control, and it didn't take long for things to spiral. Turns out, he was the son of the same HOA Karen who's made life difficult for nearly everyone in our neighborhood. She's known for her complaints, for patrolling the block like it's her private kingdom, and now, apparently, for raising someone who thought he could push around anyone who didn't belong. When I told him to back off, he called his mom, and she called the cops. That's when things got interesting. She had no idea who I was, no clue that I'd run the precinct those officers report to. No idea that I've worked twice as hard to earn every ounce of respect in this town. She just saw someone she thought she could intimidate. So when the patrol cars pulled up and Karen marched toward me with that smug look on her face, I didn't say a word. I just waited for her expression to change, and for her to realize she made a very big mistake. Karen stormed across the lot like she owned the pavement, barking orders at the officers before they'd even parked. Her son stood behind her, arms crossed like he'd just won some battle. The moment she spotted me standing near my car, still in uniform, her face froze just for a second, but she recovered fast. That woman threatened my son. She blurted out. She was aggressive and refused to leave when asked. One of the officers, clearly new on the force, looked unsure and started toward me. But the other two, they knew exactly who I was. And you could see it hit them all at once, how bad this was about to look. I didn't say anything yet. I just let them speak. I wanted to see how far Karen was willing to go. And she went all in. False claims. Twisting the story, even accusing me of stealing the groceries she'd seen me purchase. The entitlement in her voice was unreal. Like she thought the badge on my chest was some costume I was playing dress-up in. What she didn't realize was that I'd dealt with people like her my whole career, people who think their status, our connections, or their last name gives them power. But today, that illusion was about to crack. Karen kept ranting. Her son kept smirking. And I kept waiting, because the moment one of the officers turned to her and said, "Ma'am, do you know who that is?" everything started to shift. Karen blinked, caught off guard by the officer's question. "What do you mean?" she snapped, trying to regain control. But the young cop hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. The more seasoned officer stepped in, his tone calm but sharp. "That's Captain Brooks," he said. "She runs the precinct. You just called for backup." The silence that followed was thick. Karen's son shifted, that smug grin slipping off his face as fast as it came. But still, she didn't back down. "She still harassed my son," she insisted, voice raised. "I don't care what her title is, she was threatening him in public." That's when another voice entered the mix, Mrs. Delgado, a store clerk who'd been standing by the carts the whole time. "Actually," she said, "I saw the whole thing. Your son approached her, not the other way around." That's when I finally spoke, calm, measured. "Ma'am, I'd like to remind you this store has surveillance footage. We can pull it if you'd like." Karen's eyes darted toward the entrance, like she'd just realized she walked into something way over her head. But even with the walls closing in, she refused to let go of her pride. What she didn't know is that this wasn't just about today. This wasn't even the first time her son had caused trouble. There were complaints filed before. Quiet ones. Ones she buried with threats and connections. But now, everything she'd tried to cover was about to start unraveling. Piece by piece, right in front of her. The officers exchanged glances, tension thick in the air. Karen's face was tight. her jaw clenched like she could feel the situation. Slipping but had no idea how to stop it. Her son stepped forward, trying to regain control. "You're all just covering for her," he muttered. "This is exactly the problem. People like her think they can get away with anything." That line hit hard, not just because it was bold, but because of who he said it in front of. A crowd had started forming near the sidewalk. Shoppers, clerks, neighbors, people who'd seen Karen's antics over the years, people who were tired of it. And now they were listening. The younger officer pulled out his notepad. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "we'll need your son's full name. We've had prior complaints from this location involving someone matching his description. Intimidation. Verbal threats. We'll need to review everything on record." Karen's eyes widened. "That's not necessary," she snapped, her voice shaking now. "He was just defending himself. She scared him. But I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't moved a step. I stood calm in full uniform, Groceries still resting in my passenger seat. And now, with the store willing to hand over footage and witnesses ready to speak up, Karen's narrative was falling apart. What she didn't know, what no one expected, was that I wasn't just going to let this slide, because this wasn't just about Groceries. It was about the pattern, the history, and the truth finally coming to light. Just as the officer began writing down details, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. The back window rolled down, and out stepped Councilman Richard Aliskrenz, brother-in-law and a longtime friend of the HOA board. It's the same man who'd blocked earlier complaints from reaching city review. He walked over slowly, nodding politely at the officers before turning to Karen with a look of concern. "Is there a misunderstanding here?" he asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We don't want this turning into a political situation." That's when I knew this went deeper than I thought. This wasn't just Karen protecting her son. This was a family used to pulling strings, or using their connections to sweep messes under the rug. And now they were trying to do it again, right in front of a growing crowd and half the grocery store staff. The officers paused. They knew Ellis by reputation, but this time things were different. There were too many witnesses, too many eyes. And I wasn't the rookie they were used to pressuring. Councilman Ellis looked me dead in the eye and said, "I'm sure we can settle this quietly, Captain. No need to escalate." But I didn't blink. "Actually, Councilman, I think escalation is exactly what's been missing." You could feel the air shift. The officers straightened up. The cameras were still rolling. And suddenly, what started as a false call in a parking lot was turning into something much bigger than any of them had planned. The moment I spoke, the crowd quieted. Even Councilman Ellis didn't seem to expect me to push back. I stepped forward. Not aggressively, just enough to show I wasn't backing down. "Let's be clear," I said. "Your nephew harassed me, then lied about it. Your sister-in-law made a false police report. And you want to brush it off like it's a misunderstanding?" The younger officer glanced at the senior one, who gave a slight nod. That's when the mood truly shifted. "Captain," the senior officer said, turning toward me, "we'd like your permission to pull the store footage and file an official report. If you're pressing charges, we'll proceed." Karen gasped. Her son took a step back. Ellis opened his mouth, but this time, no words came out. The crowd was watching, and no amount of influence could stop what was coming next. I gave the nod. Yes, let's go by the book. The twist. As the officers moved to escort Karen's son, the store manager rushed out with a flash drive in hand. "I pulled the footage already," he said. "And, you're going to want to see this." The video didn't just show the confrontation, it also caught audio of Ellis on a previous visit, pressuring staff to ignore HOA complaints, even slipping money to a clerk. Karen's eyes filled with panic. Ellis stepped back, realizing this wasn't just about public embarrassment anymore. This could cost him his seat. The silence was heavy, but the truth was finally louder than any of them expected. The footage changed everything. Once it was reviewed at the precinct, the truth was undeniable. Karen's son had instigated the entire incident, and both she and Councilman Ellis had tried to interfere with official proceedings. The officers took statements from the store staff, several bystanders, and even the young cashier who admitted Ellis had offered him a little something extra to keep quiet weeks ago. It was all documented, signed, and submitted. Karen's son was charged with harassment and making a false statement. Karen herself faced consequences for filing a false police report, and a formal ethics investigation was opened into Ellis's conduct. Within a month, pressure from the community forced him to step down from his seat. But more importantly, something changed in the neighborhood. People who had stayed silent before began speaking up about ignored complaints, unfair treatment, and subtle bullying from the HOA. It wasn't just about groceries or one bad interaction. It was about holding people accountable, no matter how much power they thought they had. As for me, I didn't press for anything extra. I didn't need to. The truth did the work. Still shop at that store, still wear my badge with pride, and still believe that doing the right thing even when it's hard, it's always worth it.